In this video, we're going to talk about the production possibilities frontier, opportunity cost, marginal analysis, and economic growth. So we know that economics is about how people use resources, and the fact is resources are scarce. Now, scarcity requires people to make choices, and these choices are essentially trade-offs between one thing or another. And so the production possibilities frontier, sometimes we call it the PPF, is a model of the choices and the trade-offs that people make in light of scarcity. So the production possibilities frontier shows a combination of two goods that can be produced with a given resource. It's a simple model with one resource and two possible goods that can be produced. Now, it also shows us the boundary between the combination of goods that can be produced with that one resource and those that cannot, the ones that are not possible. And so when we use the PPF, we focus on two goods at one time, even though we know that in real life, really the choices are between many things. But with regards to the production possibilities frontier, the tool, we only use two goods at one time, and we assume or we hold that all the other goods and services are constant. There's nothing changing with anything else except for the two goods that we're focused on. And this saying, we call this ceteris paribus. It means that all other things stay the same, and this is the assumption that we have in economics unless we state otherwise. So this is the production possibilities frontier. Now I will note that this can be used for if we have one resource and we're trying to model the trade-offs between two things we can produce. It also works with consumption. If we have a resource and we're trying to decide between two things to consume, it works just the same between production and consumption. So it's a good model in that respect. So here is an example of a production possibilities frontier. It's the example that is used in Parkin's microeconomic textbook, where the two choices we have with the resources are between cola and pizzas. And you can see on the table on the left, we can either have, we can buy 15 sodas, 15 colas, and no pizzas. We can buy 5 pizzas and no colas, and then combinations in between. For example, we could buy 3 pizzas and 9 colas. And so the blue line there shows you all the different combinations of pizzas and colas that you can get, and the A, B, C, D, E, and F are the points that show those choices, that show those combinations. Now, we can do it with pizza and colas. We can really do it with a choice between any two goods or any two services, or really any two choices or trade-offs. So here I'm using good X and good Y, the more generic version of the PPF. And in this case, any point on the line and any point inside the line is attainable, is possible. We can use our resource and we can produce any one of the points on the line or inside the line. But any point outside the line is unattainable, like point H is outside the line, and it's just not possible. So it shows us what's possible and what's not possible. In this case, point H is not possible, and A through I is possible. So we say that we achieve production efficiency if we cannot produce any more of one good without producing any less of some other good. And so all the points on the line A, B, C, D, E, F, and G are production efficient. We're using our resources to the fullest amount. We can't get any more of one good without getting any less of another good, and that's production efficiency. Now, points inside the line, such as point I, are production inefficient, or they're not production efficient, they're inefficient. And the reason is because it's possible to get more of one of the goods without getting less of the other. We're not using our resources to the fullest extent, where some of the resources are either unemployed or they're misallocated. And so the PPF, the production possibilities frontier, and shows us the trade-offs that are involved between the different choices. And every choice along the PPF involves a trade-off. Every point on the line involves a trade-off. So if we want to have more of good X, we have to give up some of good Y. And if we want to have more of good Y, we have to give up some of good X. And the opportunity cost is the amount of good Y that you have to give up to get more of good X. And so as we move along the PPF, we produce more of good X, but the quantity of good Y that we have decreases. And so we can see here, using the PPF, what the opportunity cost is. If I want more good X, how much good Y do I have to give up to get it? Because we know opportunity cost is when you make a choice, is the thing you have to give up to get the thing that you're choosing. So the PPF can show us what the opportunity cost is as well. And so this is why the PPF is a good model for us to model choices. It shows us the trade-offs. It shows us the opportunity costs. All of those things are illustrated by using the PPF. We can see here if we're at point D and we're going to move to point E, we're making a choice to move from point D to point E. In that case, we gain one good X and we lose 3 good Y. So the opportunity cost of an additional good X is 3 good Y. Now conversely, if we're at point F and we move to point E, well, we have 1 less good X and we have 3 more good Y. So the opportunity cost of 3 good Y is 1 good X. We have to give up 1 good X to have 3 more good Y. And you can notice that the opportunity cost of one good for the other is the inverse of each other. We have to give up one of the good to get the other one. We have to give up the other good to get the first one. And so there's an inverse relationship between the opportunity cost between the two goods. And so in our example, the of moving from point F to E, 1 good X costs 3 good Y. We have to get 3 good Y to get a good X, an additional good X. And 1 good Y costs 1/3 of a good X. In order for us to have an additional Y, the opportunity cost, the cost is 1/3 of a good X. And we'll notice that the opportunity cost increases with output, which I'll show you in just a second. Now, the PPF is a curve, but it's not really a uniform curve. It actually bows. It actually bows outward, and that's because the resources that are involved are not equally productive in producing the 2 goods that we're talking about. One resource may produce more of a certain good than another good. And that's reflected on the PPF, and it's reflected on the shape of the curve of the PPF, because resources aren't equally productive. And it's in that case, as I choose more of one good and less of another, the opportunity cost increases as I try to have more of a particular good. So one of the features of opportunity costs is as they tend to increase as we consume more of the good that we're choosing over time. So here's an interesting question, and we know that water is essential to life, but diamonds, although pretty, are not really, they're certainly not essential for life, but diamonds have a very high price and water has a very low price. Why would that be? Why is something essential to life like water almost free? It has a low price most of the time, and many times it's just being given away. And diamonds, which don't have much of a use, I mean, they're mostly cosmetic. In fact, diamonds are used for industrial purposes. They're used to cut glass and things like that, but that's really more of a specialized use of diamonds. The more generic use of diamonds is somewhat superficial. They're used for decorations. They're used because they look nice, but they have a very high price. And so this is a conundrum. It's called the diamond water paradox. Why do diamonds have a high price and water, which is essential to life, have such a low price? And economists struggled with this in the classical period, and it really wasn't until 1871, with the advent of the marginal revolution, that economists were able to more clearly answer this question. And so the answer to the question is the fact that it depends on how much you have. The more we have of any good, the smaller is its marginal benefit, the incremental amount, and the less we're willing to pay for an additional unit of it. So if I'm in the desert and I'm talking about a glass of water, well, then it's going to be a great marginal benefit to me, a great incremental benefit, that one glass of water, and it's probably something I'm willing to pay a lot for. If I'm in Niagara Falls and I'm kind of in the water and water's all around me, that extra glass of water is not very valuable to me, and not something I'm willing to pay a lot for. So that's the answer to the paradox, the answer to the conundrum. The reason that water has a low price is we're looking at water at the margin in a situation where we have lots of water already. If we were to look at it in a situation at the margin where we didn't have very much water, or water was scarce or maybe non-existent, then the price of water would be great, and probably greater than the price of diamonds. And so this is marginal analysis. Now we have marginal analysis is when we study the incremental changes that result from an action or from a decision, and we have examples of this outside economics. There's the saying, the straw that broke the camel's back. If you keep loading straw onto a camel, eventually it become too heavy, and the camel will collapse. You won't be able to carry it. Now, each individual straw is not that heavy, and certainly the last one you put on is no more heavy than the millions of other ones you put on to the camel. But that one straw, what matters in marginal analysis is not the weight of the one straw, but how much. When you're adding a straw, what are you adding it to? How many are there already? So each straw does not have the same impact to the camel. The straw that breaks the camel's back has a much bigger impact to the camel than all the previous ones, even though each one of the straws is identical in size and weight, or they're all the same. And we have another notion. We're talking about the boiling point of water, which is 212 degrees. If I'm heating water and it goes from 157 to 158 degrees, well, it gets a little hotter, but not really much else changes. When I go from 211 to 212, that's only 1 degree difference, but that 1 degree is much different. When I go from 211 to 212, the state of the water changes. It starts to boil, and so again, each degree does not have the same impact. The one that brings us to 212 degrees has a bigger impact, or a different impact than the previous ones. And so this is marginal analysis, studying the incremental changes that result from decisions and from actions. Now, in economics, when we look at cost and benefits, when we look at choices, when we look at decisions, we want to look at the marginal cost and benefits. Those are the ones that matter when we're trying to determine what we should produce, or what we should consume, or what choices we should make. And when we're analyzing the trade-offs, we compare the marginal costs and the marginal benefits. Now, the marginal cost of a good or service is the incremental opportunity cost of producing it or consuming one more use of it. In other words, what do I have to give up to get this additional unit? That's the marginal cost that we look at, and that's the one we're concerned with when we're talking about choices. Now, this is true. So the marginal benefit, conversely, is the incremental utility that I receive from either producing or consuming one more unit of it. So how much additional utility do I get? How much additional benefit do I get from that additional unit? And we measure the marginal benefit by the amount that somebody is willing to pay for an additional good or service. So we see that one of the important things about marginal cost and benefits is they're forward-looking. We don't look at any sunk costs or past costs or any previous benefits or past benefits. It's always forward-looking. It's the costs and benefits, the incremental costs and benefits that you will incur that are associated specifically with a decision and that are a direct result of the decision. So when you're thinking about which choice to make, these costs and benefits are in the future. They don't happen until you make the choice. They don't happen until you actually choose. And so when we look at the marginal costs increase. The more we consume of something, the marginal cost associated with our choice increases. So we have to give more up of good Y for each incremental unit of good X. So as we see, as we go from point A to G, making stops at B, C, D, E, and F, the amount of good Y we have to give up to get one additional X goes from 1 to 2 to 3 and eventually 5. So the marginal costs increase. This is a feature of marginal costs. Marginal costs increase. The more we consume of something, the more incremental units we choose, the higher is the marginal cost, the opportunity cost of each incremental unit. So marginal costs increase as we consume more of something. Now, conversely, marginal benefits decrease. The more we have of any particular good, well, the smaller is its marginal benefit, and the less we're willing to pay for an additional unit of it. You can think about an example of a pencil. If somebody offers me a pencil, how much am I willing to pay for it? Well, if I've got 100 pencils already, the value of 101st one is not that much. The incremental benefit is not that much, and therefore I'm willing to pay not very much for that 100th pencil. If I have no pencils and I need one, if I'm going to be taking a test, maybe it's an important test, I have no pencil, I forgot mine, well, the value of that, when I go from 0 to 1, might be pretty great, and I'm probably going to be willing to pay more for it. So marginal costs increase, marginal benefits decrease, and now we have to take a look at the individuals and their preferences, because marginal costs and marginal benefits are specific to an individual and specific to their preferences, what they like and dislike. And so preferences are just a description of a person's likes or dislikes, and they're held by individuals. They reflect subjective values. So the marginal costs and marginal benefits, we know the general tendency, marginal costs will increase, marginal benefits will decrease, but specifically where somebody is at a particular point in time depends on the individual. It depends on their individual likes and dislikes, their subjective values. Now, it's important to note also that economists are concerned really with demonstrated preferences, the choices that you actually make or that you're actually going to make, not on ones that so to use a voting analogy, we're interested in not who you say you're going to vote for, but who you actually vote for. So your demonstrated preferences are the ones that matter in economics, the choices that you are either acting on or plan to act on. And so preferences that depend on these marginal costs and marginal benefits. So let's get back to our production possibilities frontier. We know that all the points on the production possibilities frontier are production efficient. We can't get any more of one good without giving up some of another good. And so they're all production efficient, and as a matter of fact, they're equally production efficient. But which one is which one of the production efficient points is allocation efficient? Well, when we cannot give up any of one good without giving up a good we value more highly, then we've achieved allocation efficiency. So all the points on the line are production efficient. Only one of the points of those lines is allocation efficient. One of those points is a point that we prefer more than any other point. So here, if we look at our example, remember all the points on the line, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G are production efficient. They're all using resources to the fullest amount. We can't get any more of one good without giving up another good, but only one of these is allocation efficient. Remember, when we're talking about allocation efficient, we're talking about marginal costs and marginal benefits. These are specific to an individual. So for me, point D is allocation efficient. This is where we have 3 good X and 11 good Y. This is the point on the line that I prefer to all the other points. And so this is an example of allocation efficiency, where the marginal costs, which increase, and the marginal benefits, which are decreasing, where they intersect each other, and they are intersecting one of the points on the curve, point D. So point D in this case represents allocative efficiency. It's the point that we prefer. Of the production efficient points, it's the point that we prefer the most. And since we're talking about preferences, we're tying it back to the individual and the marginal cost and marginal benefits specific to them. So point D is allocation efficient. And only one point can be allocation efficient. Only one point can be the one that we prefer more than the others. Now, what happens in this case if I'm at point C? Well, if I'm at point C with 2x and 13y, the marginal benefits exceed the marginal costs. Now, at first, that may sound like a good thing, but it's not, because I can get more value from the resources I have by producing or consuming more good X and reducing the amount of good Y that I have. So I'm better off by moving from point C to point D, which involves more X, less Y, because that's a point that I prefer more. Now, in a similar way, if I'm at point E, well, and I'm at 4x and 8y, well, the marginal costs now are greater than the marginal benefits. The marginal costs are up here, the marginal benefits are down here, and I would get more. I'm consuming too much, in this case, of good X. I'd be better off if I consumed less good X and more good Y. So again, it's better for me to move from point E to point D, and that's the point of allocative efficiency. So when we're talking about using resources efficiently, we have production efficiency. We're using resources to the fullest. All the points on the production possibilities of frontier are production efficient. But when we're talking about allocation efficient, only one point is one of those points is one that we prefer to all the other ones, and that's the one where the marginal costs and the marginal benefits are equal, and they intersect at point D. So now let's use the production possibilities frontier not to talk about pizza and soda or good X and good Y, but to talk about economic growth. But the choice we make between the present and the future. And so we look at economic growth as an expansion of production, expansion of our production possibilities. And the reason that we're interested in economic growth and expanding our production possibilities is because that's a situation where our standard of living increases. The more goods and services we have available to us, the more we're able to consume, and the higher is our standard of living. Now, there's two factors that determine economic growth. One is technological change, the extent to which we can develop either brand new goods and services or better ways of producing the goods and services that we care about. And so technology enables us to do that. With the same amount of resources, we can produce more. And so that's one of the ways that we can have economic growth. The other way is capital accumulation. Now, capital are the resources that we've put into productive capacity. These are machines and tools and robots and factories and buildings, things that we allocate resources not for current consumption, but really so we can produce goods and services that will be available to us in the future. And so this, any of these resources that we allocate towards future production is called capital. And so to the extent that we're able to allocate more resources towards future production and less of those resources towards current consumption, well, that's another source of economic growth. And so what's important to note here is that both of these whether we're creating new technologies or we're using resources to invest in future productive capacity, both of these will allow us to produce more tomorrow, but they require us to decrease our consumption today. decrease the amount of goods and services that we're going to consume in today's horizon. So we can see this is one of the important lessons here is that economic growth is not free. The cost, the trade-off of economic growth, of having more tomorrow, is less consumption today. So if we want to invest in new technologies, if we want to invest in productive resources, both of which will allow us to produce more tomorrow, we have to take some of the resources that we could use for consumption today, some of them, and not use them for consumption, but instead invest them into new technology and into capital. And so when we do this, we go back to our production possibilities frontier. We can see that if we want to move from the black line to the blue line tomorrow, that blue PPF involves more production, more goods and services available to tomorrow. So a greater PPF tomorrow. Well, we have to consume less today. We have to move to the red line today and invest the resources that are the differences between the black line and the red line into technological development, into capital, and productive resources. Resources used for production, not consumption. So we can move to the blue line tomorrow. So the red line shows us less consumption today, and the result of that will be more production and therefore more consumption tomorrow. So we're able to push the PPF out to the blue line by consuming less today. And so here the production possibilities frontier is not showing us, it's showing us the choice we have to make between the present and the future, between between current consumption and future consumption. Now, if we look at our public sector, where we've accumulated $29 trillion in debt, about half of this in really just the last 5 or 10 years, what does the production possibilities frontier tell us? Well, if we consume more now, we're going to have to consume less later. Going back to our example, if we're consuming out here on the blue line, and the way we've done it is by borrowing, if we've gone from the black line to the blue line through borrowing, well, that means that in the future, we're going to have to be on the red line. If we're going to consume more today, we're going to have to, we're going to wind up producing and consuming less tomorrow. So we can use this, the PPF, to help us model economic growth and the consequences of consuming more today through borrowing. So the great thing about the production possibilities frontier is we can really model any sets of choices. A good X and good Y could be military spending and spending on the environment. It could be spending between today. Good X can be today. Good Y can be tomorrow. We can show the benefits of saving, and so that's why the PPF is such a good tool. It enables us to model any sets of choices that we have to make. Any sets. It shows us the trade-offs that we're making. It enables us to look at the opportunity cost and see how they change over time, and see what the best choice is for us to make. So this is the production possibilities frontier, opportunity cost, marginal analysis, and economic growth.